Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton, and today we have our final college football conference preview, where we land in the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC. Now, truth be told, I had what I wanted to say written out before week 0, before the Dublin disaster. So, editorially, I am going to make the decision to not change anything. I am keeping my top tier program, sleeper teams, all that stuff the same because that is what I believed coming in the season, and I don't want to change that based off of one game. Or in this case, by the time I'm recording this, UNC played Minnesota last night, and we also had, again, the Georgia Tech Florida State game. So NC State played as well last night. That being said, I am going to preview this as if this was before week 0, and I'm going to stick to my guns because why wouldn't I want to do that? So, you know the drill: top tier program, sleeper teams, teams in trouble, and most impactful players. Top tier programs, let's start it off with my editorial decision. FSU and UM. In hindsight, this may not look that great. However, I'm sticking to it because I believe. FSU returns plenty of talent from their undefeated team on defense, and they brought in some new talent on offense. And they will look to their, what many people call an elite defense, to help them dominate games. Again, this is something we spoke about in previous podcasts. The D-line was considered one of the best in the country. You've got Joshua Farmer, Darrell Jackson Jr., Patrick Payton, Marvin Jones Jr. You could see the shift that they did with the wide receiver group, like we spoke about previously, going for speed with Malik Benson and Brown. So I'm expecting, first game notwithstanding, a more balanced offense that will lean heavily on the run game and look for DJU to take deep shots downfield. I think FSU is one of the better teams, not only in the ACC, but in the country. I think they will perform well going forward. I think that initially my range for this team was 9-3 to 11-1. The problem is now you wasted one of your so-called mulligans on Georgia Tech, a team that might have been underrated coming in. But the 3 hardest games you were looking at were Clemson, Notre Dame, and UM. Worst case scenario, you lose all 3 of those and you win everything else, you're 9-3. And now they can't afford that. So we'll see how they move moving forward. My other top tier program, no, it is not Clemson. It is UM, and this is not any sort of bias involved with these two programs. I really do believe UM is probably the most talented team on paper in the ACC. It has never been a matter of talent issue at UM under Mario Cristobal. It's been a coaching issue. UM is all in this year. Cam Moore, Damian Martinez on offense. I believe they had another wide receiver transfer from Toledo, one of those other smaller schools. You have that great offensive line coming back. You have that young defensive line. It's envied by many teams in the nation. if they clean up the coaching mistakes, watch out for UM this year. I believe that they should be. The only reason why they're not favored to win the ACC is because of the coaching. Pundits, bettors, local people, etc., all believe in Dabo Swinney, unfortunately, and Mike Norvell more than they believe in Mario Cristobal. Until he's able to prove them otherwise, in a lot of people's minds, UM will not be fully back yet. But again, I'm stating it here now, folks. This is the year that UM is back. This is the year, again, hopefully FSU didn't ruin it with the Georgia Tech loss. This is the year that ACC finally gets their dream matchup in the conference championship game with UM versus FSU. Hot take might be cold take already, but that's what I thought going into this season. Sleeper teams, I got Virginia Tech. Let that simmer a little. Virginia Tech and Brent Pry. The Hokies bring back virtually everyone from last year's team that won 5 of its last 7 games and scored over 40 points in its last 3 victories. This is a team that can make some serious noise in the ACC if people aren't careful with how they approach them. There's a lot of explosive talent, clearly with that stat that I just read of the 40-plus points in the last 3 victories that are coming back. Good for Brent Pry to bring back this once proud program. Let's not, like, and I said that for Nebraska in one of the previous ones, but Virginia Tech for a lot of years under Frank Beamer, was a really, really good program. They made the national championship game with Michael Vick against Florida State in 99 or 2000. It's for the 99 season because that's when FSU went wire to wire. So again, not in the sense of Nebraska where they were winning championships left and right, but they were always a consistent program in the Big East and the ACC. So it's good to see them kind of getting their feet underneath them and bringing some much needed depth to the ACC. The other team I'm leaning for is, and again, I'm not going to put NC State here because there are expectations they're going to be a solid team. I'm not going to put, obviously, Clemson or Miami or FSU. I'm going to go with North Carolina and Mac Brown. Without a superstar QB, North Carolina looks to be headed in a rebuilding direction, a rough season. But will a change in the blueprint lead to a surprise season? An elite running game behind a massive O-line and ideally a revamped, improved defense could mean a season that Tar Heel fans can enjoy. Again, you've had a run of Marquise Williams, I believe that was his name, then Mitch Trubisky for one season, then Sam Howell for a few seasons, then you had Drake May. You've had a really good run of solid to great QB play. And now with Max Johnson, and as we recorded this, the previous night he fell to an injury. It was either a hip injury or a knee injury. And where are you going to go on next? But you are clearly going to depend on the run game. And ideally with Gene Chizik out of there. And you have, I believe it's Jeff Collins, the former coach of Georgia Tech, as a defensive coordinator. You have a feeling that just any sort of competent improvement in the defense, and North Carolina could be a solid team this year. Teams in trouble. No real teams with coaches on the hot seats. I mean, Wake Forest, you're fine there. The Carolinas, you're okay. The Florida teams, you're okay. Virginia, I mean, you could say Tony Allen might be in trouble, but there's just unfortunate incidents that have happened there, you know, with the whole campus deaths of players from the football team that kind of really shattered the end of one of their previous seasons, that it's being handled differently over there. So I don't want to say he's on the hot seat, but they do need to perform better. But I don't think they're going to fire him because of everything that's been going on. And the only team I'm going to put on here is kind of like the same way we approach the Big Ten with how we viewed Ohio State having a lot of pressure. I'm slapping that label on Clemson and Dabo Swinney. I'm not suggesting a losing season. However, the cracks in the foundation could be severely exposed within a much deeper league this year. They have Georgia to start off this Saturday, to start off the season. They were, last time I saw, were an 11.5-point underdog. And then they face NC State, FSU, Louisville, Virginia Tech, and then you could throw in South Carolina to end the season. There could be, you're going to lose to Georgia. Can FSU right the ship? Can Virginia Tech pull off the upset? NC State's going to be solid. Louisville's got a lot of pieces coming back and some stuff from the transfer portal. Again, there could be 3 losses in there with a healthy team. You got to remember, Dabo doesn't believe in the transfer portal. As he quoted in a very Dabo classic manner of, dismissing logic and reasoning, that they do tap into the transfer portal because kids from high school are transferring to Clemson. That is a real quote, ladies and gentlemen. That is not me trying to bash this man. He literally said they dabbled in transfer portal, dabbles in the transfer portal because high school kids are transferring to Clemson. I'm letting that simmer for a little bit so you can understand how ridiculous that sounds in today's day and age. Dabo Swinney is going to cost Clemson's spot among the elite teams in the college football world. You don't believe in that transfer portal. You don't think that all these kids are going to not leave the program. And don't get me wrong, the front 7 of Clemson is elite. But where's the depth behind them? Clemson struggles in the sense of they lose recruits in the same way that Georgia has, because there's a sense of, when am I going to start? The instant gratification in today's college football kids. And if you're not replacing them in the transfer portal with people that you like, that depth is going to rear its ugly head when you're going to have to start playing true freshmen or sophomores that are not ready. This could be the season that happens, because hiring away Garrett Riley from TCU, thinking that was going to fix Cade Klubnik, it didn't necessarily do that. You're still leaning heavily on your defense. And there's no more Mike Williams or DeAndre Hopkins or Sammy Watkins, any of those guys coming out of Clemson. And again, you don't have that run of Taj Boyd, Sean Watson, that one season of Kelly Bryant, and Trevor Lawrence. You thought DJU was going to be that, DJ Ungulale, because that one game at Notre Dame, and then he never really developed, and we kind of seen the ceiling with him. And FSU fans are hoping that Mike Norvell and company can unlock a little bit more. And again, Cade Klubnik was supposed to be the return to that, another 5-star kid. DJ was a 5-star kid as well. And he hasn't gotten there. You hired basically a high school coach who had been an analyst on your team as an offensive coordinator to keep it within the family, and look how that worked out. You had to go on and you had to get Riley from TCU. A lot of these bad decisions start stacking up. Eventually, you get comfortable in your own ways. He's not even taking phone calls because of Tyler from Spartanburg last year on his weekly program. that doesn't bode well, because it doesn't show that you're capable of the criticism. Man, I'm really diving in on Dabo here. I told you folks I could have done a straight podcast just on him alone. So I'll take a little time to do this segue. You don't have the thick skin to take the criticism when you're 4-4, which, by the way, you finished 5-0 for the rest of the season. I'm not mistaken, to finish 9-4 last year after that phone call. Maybe you should give Tyler from Spartanburg a little bit of credit for firing you up in some way. It's all fun and games when you're finishing 10-2, 10-3, 11-1, 12-0, or whatever, winning national championships with the likes of Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. When push comes to shove, are you able to adapt? This is a new age in college football. Conference realignment, NIL, transfer portal. This is the same coach who said, once players start getting played, you'll see me retire, or you'll see me leave the sport. He said something along those lines. He's still there. And players are getting their name, image, and likeness payments. Just pointing that out. So, again, I'm not wishing it. It almost sounds like I'm hoping Clemson's foundations are kind of just falling apart this season. But again, I'm approaching this from an unbiased perspective. That being said, we'll move on to the most impactful players. Omarion Hampton, UNC running back, 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns. He is going to be leaned on heavily this year. Ruben Bain Jr., defensive end out of UM, a sophomore, not a redshirt. He plays a true freshman last year. 12.5 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. He's going to be leading that strong defensive line of UM. We got Kyron Drunes, the QB from Virginia Tech. He's going to be, like I said, leading that high-powered, potent offense, hopefully, and helping Virginia Tech kind of maybe an 8-win season, maybe 9, but hopefully an 8-win season. Patrick Payton, defensive end FSU, 14 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 7 hurries, 10 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles. This man is going to need to step up without Jared Verse on his other side. He is going to be the leader of this defensive line. And judging by the way they played against Georgia Tech, he really needs to step up on that leadership aspect and his performance on the field. Set those edges, man. Most important games. NC State at Tennessee, September 7th. The battle of the ACC versus SEC early on in the season. NC State has high expectations. Can they finally live up to them? We'll see. We already know how I feel about Tennessee. It's going to be an interesting game. And if NC State comes out of this one with a win, watch out. That's going to give them a lot of confidence, a lot of momentum for the rest of the season. Clemson at Georgia. That's this Saturday, August 31st. I think we know how I feel about that game from previous statements on Georgia and my little rant back there a few minutes ago with Clemson. Again, it's Clemson at Georgia. Georgia's 11.5, I think, like I said last time I checked. I think they'll cover that. UM versus UF, another one opening weekend. UM's a 2.5-point underdog going into this. 2.5-point favorite going into the Swamp. It's a statement game for both programs. Mario Cristobal, you had the ability, and so does Billy Napier, because they both face FSU this year as well. Whoever wins this game has the ability to be the state champion, something that's not very easily accomplished for UM and UF because FSU plays both of them every single year. UM and UF play every blue moon. The last time they played was in 2019. Who knows when they'll play again? So, very important. There's a lot of recruits coming in. On the Gators side, can Mario Cristobal and company make an impression with those recruits by beating down UF in their home field. Again, we'll see. Statement game, like I said, folks. FSU at Miami, October 26th. That's going to be for bragging rights of, if you ask me, because I think UM's going to beat FSU. I'm saying, whoa, no. Oh, we got to edit that out. I think UM's going to beat Florida. And then FSU versus UM is going to be for state championship bragging rights. So, that being said, I mean, in all honesty, you've only got maybe two teams who could make some noise in the college football playoffs with FSU and UM, and it doesn't look good for FSU with the way they start off the season against Georgia Tech. I do still believe they are one of the better teams in the country, though, and Mike Norvell and company will right the ship. So, Mario Cristobal, you got the pressure of bringing the U all the way back. You also got the pressure of carrying the ACC on your shoulders. Good luck. So, that concludes our previews for the top conferences in college football. Folks, needless to say, after all these previews, it's very clear. And if you turn on your televisions last night and tonight, Friday, and then Saturday, you also have the game on Sunday between USC and LSU, and the game on Monday, Labor Day weekend, the cap with Boston College at FSU. In the words of Stu Goss from the Dan Le Batard Show, college football is back. I mean, it's a great time of the year, folks. This is I think if you haven't picked up by now, college football is one of my favorite things to watch. It's not just one team, it's countless teams. Obviously, I do follow FSU and UM differently from other teams, but there's just so many storylines that you could pick and choose. There's the 12-team college football playoffs this year, conference realignment, who's going to be able to make it in from the group of five? Where's Notre Dame finishing this year? Is the U back? Is the University of Southern California, USC, are they going to be able to come back under Lincoln Riley in the Big Ten? How are Texas and Oklahoma going to fare? Oregon's one of the most smash mouth teams in the country, taking on their persona of their coach. Can they transfer that to the Big Ten, and can they start winning big games? There's just a lot of things that you can think about. What's going to happen post-Saban in the Alabama world? I mean, just whew. It's exciting to think about, folks. It's going to be a lot of content this year. I'm going to be going all out in terms of not just UM and FSU podcasts, but we're going to go around the country. We're going to see what's appealing, what storylines are interesting. We're going to review it every weekend. I'm going to shoot for 3 podcasts. One about UM, one about FSU, and again, whatever else is a catchy storyline in the college football world that weekend. So keep a lookout for that. You know the drill. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube. Like, follow, subscribe, do all that positive stuff. Man, it's a good time. College football's back, man. Thanks for stopping by, folks. Thanks for listening to this episode. And we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights.